and welcome to episode 31 of Book Writing Tips, quick tips for new and seasoned authors, and I am your host, Alba Arango. In today's episode, I want to go over the strategies I used this month of Novel November in overcoming writer's block. And yes, I've done an entire episode on overcoming writer's block and different strategies you can use. And I actually used a couple of those strategies this month. And I was trying to plow through that novel, and I actually did. So I want to share what strategies I used to overcome writer's block. Alrighty then. Before I get into today's episode, I do want to tell you that it's going to be a little bit shorter than usual because as those of you who live in the U.S. and are about to celebrate Thanksgiving and are hosting Thanksgiving will understand, my house is about to be full of people and toddlers and craziness and mounds of joy, and I cannot wait, but I have a ton of things to do. So today's episode is going to be a little bit on the shorter side, but it will be in two parts as always. In part one, I want to talk about how I wrote future scenes in order to overcome writer's block. And in part two, which is actually what I did more, is how I used my notes to overcome writer's block. So let's get right down to it. Part one, how I used future scenes to overcome writer's block. Now, those of you who follow me on social media, you kind of already know that I actually have already completed my novel. It actually only took me 23 days of plowing through the 1,667 words a day to actually complete my first draft of my new book. Now, again, I do write children's books and my average length is about 35 to 40,000. So it makes sense that I could get through my whole novel during Novel November. But that doesn't mean I don't overcome writer's block like every other author. And this time, here's kind of the two big strategies that I use. Let's start with the first one, which is writing a future scene. Now, a caveat here, I am a pantser, and that actually makes it a little bit harder for you if you get writer's block because you actually don't know where the story is going. So what I did is when I would get stuck, and I did this, I think, twice during this Novel November, I got stuck. I had no idea where I wanted the scene to go. So what I decided to do instead was I wrote a scene that I would like to see happen somewhere in the future. And I wrote that scene, and that helped me get my word count for the day. But it also helped me because once I wrote that scene, what I did then was, okay, so then how are my kids going to get from the place where I left off to this future scene? And so then I was like, okay, well, I could have them do this. And that's what I did. I had them do this. Now, in normal times, when it's not Novel November and I'm not super pressed for time, I like to use this strategy because what happens is a lot of times it gives me ideas of where I want it to go when I get stuck because I've written this future scene. So I know kind of like where I want the kids to end up. And that kind of helps me. It guides me on how I want to progress to get to that scene. Now, I will tell you, a couple times I have done this. I have started to write heading towards that scene and then, I really think the kids should go this way instead. And I end up taking them a completely different way. And sometimes I don't even end up using that scene that I wrote. But it was a point where I wanted the kids to get to. And so it gave me the inspiration I needed to get through the writer's block, to have the kids go in a way I wanted them to go. And even though I didn't end up there, I ended up someplace completely different. It broke the writer's block. It got me writing my characters into the scenes I wanted them to get to. So that is definitely an amazing tool to help to overcome writer's block, is to write a future scene and then write the way they get from point A to point B. All right, before I get to part two, which is where I really use the most of an overcoming writer's block during Novel November, it's time for the crazy law/writing prompt. And those of you who are new to the show, every week I give you a crazy law, and this is a law that once upon a time was a real law in history, and your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to write a story based on that crazy law. And it's just a good way to flex your writing muscles and kind of get you out of your comfort zone, maybe into writing something you never thought you'd write. So here we go. This week's crazy law. In South Dakota, women over 50 years of age may not speak to married men over 20 on the sidewalks and streets. Ooh, I guess they had a thing about cougars. Anyways, now it's your job. This is really fun for those of you who are romance writers. Go ahead, go at it, figure out a story that why they wanted to make that a law. All right, but let's get to part 2, which for me is what I use the most in overcoming writer's block during Novel November. Now, in previous podcasts, I told you that when I write, I like to keep notes. Because sometimes I will come up with something, I'll be like, why is he wearing a red shirt? Or why did they do this? Or why are they doing this as I write my scene? And I know that I need to go back and explore it. So I write myself notes. And if you're using Scrivener, of course, you can do the notes on the side. You can do that. I usually do use Scrivener, but I also use sticky notes. And I have sticky notes over my desk when I write a book. Now, during Novel November, I think I told you guys this last week in our storyboarding thing, I write a lot of notes because I'll be writing a scene like that happened this time where I had a scene where the kids were trapped in a trailer and the door is stuck and they couldn't get out. And there's like this emergency going on outside and they needed to get out and they couldn't get out because the door was stuck. And I had to be like, why is the door stuck? Like, was it stuck before? I mean, they've been in this trailer before. Was it stuck before? Is it now stuck now? I need to figure that out. So I made a note to myself. So what ended up happening in this Novel November is I'm writing and I'm way past this and I'm like, how did these kids get stuck in there? And I got to a place where I was like stuck. I was stuck in it. I was well past that scene where the kids had gotten stuck, but I didn't know where to progress from there. And so what I did was I looked through my notes and I saw that. I was like, you know what? Let me just take a moment and write that scene. It's not chronologically where I was in the story. I was going to have to go back into it pretty far back to figure out where I wanted to, but I knew I wanted to write a scene where the kids, had to deal with this stuck door. That scene was going to take place long before I'm in my emergency scene where they had that stuck door. So that's what I did. I stopped writing where I was because I was stuck and I didn't know where to progress from there. And then I looked through my notes. I found that. I was like, all right, let me write this scene. And it ended up being a fairly long scene. And then if I was actually storyboarding, it would be so easy because then I could just look at the storyboard and figure out where I wanted to place this new scene that I wrote. But during Novel November, I don't storyboard. So then I literally had to scroll back through and try to figure out where the scene would go well. But it was a 1,000-word scene. And so it was really easy. It helped me make my word count for the day. And I was still working on my work in progress. It was just a scene that I went back and added before. Now, that doesn't always happen where it's a 1,000-word scene, but sometimes it's 100-word or a 200-word. And that helps with your word count for the day. And you're still working on your work in progress. And you do have to go back and put it in. But it is a great way to, if you get stuck, help with your word count for that day. So maybe that night while you're lying in bed, you can brainstorm where you want the story to go tomorrow. But it helps you make your word count for today. So there you go, the 2 big strategies that I use this month for Novel November to get me through my writer's block. And they are great tools to get you through writer's block any time of the year. And if you want more tools and more suggestions, then do go back and look at my podcast that I did just on writer's block. It was one of the first few I did. It was like episode 4 or episode 5. I have to scroll back and look for that episode with a lot of great tools on overcoming writer's block. That's it for this week. Remember, I drop a new episode every Wednesday, so I will see you next month for December. And if you are in the U.S. and celebrating Thanksgiving this week, then I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving. And if you are not, then I wish you a very happy rest of the week. Be safe, and I will see you all next week.